Welcome, wordsmiths. We are so glad you guys are here already. I'll keep an eye on the waiting room if anybody else pops in, but we can just go ahead and get started. I'm Rebecca, for anybody that's new to me, book coach, writing mentor, editor, different ways to work with me. This is going to be about the weight of the word. Rachelle is a poetry guru, coach, and editor, and I'll let her introduce herself, of course. But Rachelle and I did this last year. We had our annual poetry and fiction workshop, and this year we decided our theme would be the weight of the word. And so many people I've been talking to recently are being very literal about the mechanics of the craft, and it's kind of concerning as writers. I mean, we are supposed to be able to use our words in a little bit more of a creative outlet, whether it's poetry or fiction or creative nonfiction. So the mechanics are great, but that doesn't mean we can't think outside the box. But that doesn't mean we should be writing performative prose and just fluff. So we're kind of going to base our workshop on that, and it is a workshop, so hopefully you've got your writing utensils, because we'll be writing in between, pen or keyboard. Rod's our keyboarder. I've got my pen ready. But Rachelle, did you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I like the spooky keyboard thing. It feels like ghost stories. Um, so hi, I'm Rachelle Mecca. As Rebecca said, I'm a poet primarily, I suppose. Also, yeah, I'm a self-published poet, and I also opened up my own po publishing company called Peacock Poetry Publishing. And with that, I'm publishing poetry books, personal memoirs, and children's books. No children's books have come my way, but it's just become apparent to me that it's a fit. So,
Nice.
so yeah, I'm also intrigued to write or to do this workshop on this theme because it is definitely a very prominent thing in the poetry world for say less experienced writers that there's a lot of big or fluffy or profound sounding words that people will use in a poem that it just doesn't belong because it takes away from the point. And then because it starts to feel really good, and that's nice, or it feels poetic, but then when you strip it back, what does it really mean? Is it just to sound like, you know, special or something? And so yeah, just stripping back all of that kind of prose, and where just being more direct and literal, and a little bit to the opposite effect of what Rebecca just said, but but in storytelling and in poetry, they have different kinds of effects. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes being a little bit more literal to build that image is stronger than just being a little too ethereal, so to say.
Yes, I agree. Big time. That's stripping out the vague. I mean, abstract is great, abstract is art, but vague is a problem, and people kind of
Mhm.
confuse that. I think they'll try to be so poetic with this vagueness, and it's really no, specificity is key to the truth, and that's what we need to find.
Exactly.
We need to find the truth, and I'll be talking about that a bit too. Well, why don't we do a creative writing 5 minute dump where we just write for 5 minutes to clear the mind, clear the clutter, and open up the creativity. So when I do brain dumps, I just tell people write whatever you want. Just you can write your, what you did today, make it a journal entry. If it's something creative writing, go for it. If it's just your grocery list or your to-do list, just get everything out of your head and onto the paper to start warming up the ink. Sound good?
Sounds great. Getting my journal ready.
All right, get your journal. I will go ahead and set a timer for 5 minutes and we can begin. All right, there's my quote. Beautiful nonsense is still nonsense. If you have a fantasy with a giraffe with butterfly wings, that's totally cool. Not a problem. If you are writing a romance or a literary fiction or a thriller, sci-fi, well, even sci-fi might be okay with that. But if you are just referencing a giraffe with butterfly wings with no meaning, there's no logic, you're going to break that reader immersion. So if you are saying, hey, was going down the roller coaster, felt like a giraffe with butterfly wings, that is going to pull a reader out because it doesn't make sense to them. There's nothing they can relate to. So when we're using those metaphors, when we're using figurative language, there has to be some type of logic to it. Now, this is a quote that a writer sent me in a DM, and he's like, flamethrower. And I read this line and went, that sounds really cool. But is it? Is this profound? Is this pretty? Is there logic to it? What you call yourself tells the ground how to bury you.
Doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. It does not make sense. The dirt doesn't care if your name is Henry or George. Now, I know what the author was probably trying to convey here, how you live your life, how others feel, all of those things, feel about you, how you feel about yourself. Maybe all of those things, could be profound. But this is not profound. This does not make sense. So I asked the member, I said, so what did this mean to you? He said, I took it as a threat. Well, I find out it's a Western revenge thriller. Okay. So this was a veiled threat. Still not working. Even with context, this metaphor is illogical. It's not a metaphor, I'm sorry, but it's illogical. And so these are the types of performative prose that I talk about when I say it doesn't matter how cool it sounds. Yeah, that does sound really cool.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no sense to it. And so what happens with your reader when they get to that line? They stop to think about it and go, what does that mean? And now their immersion is broken. They've stopped what they're reading and they got to get back into it. So we always want to avoid that type of writing. And so when we use our figurative language, we have to be careful. And we know what figurative language is: personification, similes, metaphors. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but I want to talk about similes and metaphors a bit because I recently got into a pretty healthy, unhealthy debate on a Facebook writing group about it because they were so focused on the mechanics of similes and metaphors being the same thing. And yeah, they're both comparative tools. Fine, cool. One uses the words as or like, and one is a direct comparison. But we're writers. And so we can look beyond the mechanics on this and say, what is the difference between these? And it's narrative proximity. Because when you're using a simile, you are using it to establish environment. And when you're using a metaphor, you're using it to establish atmosphere. Because when you're using that simile, you are saying something is like it. You're saying, look at this, it's like that. It's something as that. You're seeing it. When you're saying a metaphor is something, you are bringing that reader closer and saying, feel this. It's the same thing. So you're looking at it, observing it, or you're feeling it. So her tears fell like a waterfall. It's a simile. It's fine. You can see that. The tears fell like a waterfall. Got it. Her tears were a waterfall. Now you're closer. Now you're feeling it. It's a difference. And both are perfectly acceptable depending on why you are writing it. What is your intention? The intention is the important part. You don't want all metaphors. You don't want all similes. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish. Where do you want your reader in that moment? And so that's when you need to make those choices. And it's not just, it doesn't matter. They're both the same. One weighs more than the other, depending on the moment. Metaphors should not compete with your prose or with each other. I have seen some crazy metaphors where it's 3 different metaphors on a page and none of them have anything to do with anything else. It's all over the place. It's too jarring. You kind of give your readers whiplash. Here's you need logic to it, right? There can't be this well, here I have an example here. His thoughts were a tangled ball of yarn, sharp enough to cut. I mean, you can cut yarn, But yarn's not sharp, so that's completely illogical. And here, his throat was dry as the desert, as if sitting in a dental chair for a long while. All right, yep, throat dry, dental chair dry, but they're not related. What does this have to do with any of it? And if this was taking place in a spa, it'd be even sillier because it has nothing to do with a desert, a dental chair, or any of those things. So you wanted to have some type of logic, not just within its own metaphor, which is essential, but also within the prose itself. Because without the logic, it's a leap of faith. Grounding anchors and sensory anchors. I talk about anchors a lot, and you have to decide once again what your intention is. So if you are using grounding anchors, you're going to put the reader in the room, and that's going to be for orientation. If you're using sensory anchors, it's for impact. You're telling your readers how to feel. So this does not mean every scene needs to be a grounding anchor, a sensory anchor. You can use details and describe an entire room and not worry about a grounding anchor. But then you're putting the reader in the room, not in a specific spot. You're not drawing their focus to anything. Same thing with the sensory anchor. If you are using all the senses to describe something, fine, but it's sensory overload. And they start to drift away. Now they got 5 different senses up here, and it's like little balloons floating away, or one sense that's pulling them down. Depends on where you want your reader. Are they supposed to feel something significant in this moment? Do they need to be focused on something in this room that's critical? If it's just a general scene, no. But if it's something that you really want that impact, that weight of the word, this is how you do it. So what holds more weight here? An old handkerchief that smells like tobacco and peppermint. Or an old handkerchief that smells of peppermint, yellowed with tobacco, pale to the touch, but light as a feather. It's got more detail. You might be able to see the handkerchief more. But what actually has the weight? What is making you go, ooh, I can feel that now. I can smell that. The one sense is going to work more than a lot of them, just because it's a reader psychology on that closeness. So however you feel, it's going to determine the weight. Again, it's about intention. Everything we do, even breaking the rules, is about intention. When we break our craft rules, know what they mean, break them on purpose. Do it with intention. So the Marrow method is what I use to describe this to people, because the Marrow is the truth. It is the core. Without that, here's what your Marrow is essential for. It's producing cells, it's supporting your immune system, it's aiding in oxygen, it clots your blood, stores fat, provides nutrition. Without the Marrow, you can't live with it. And when people talk about getting to the Marrow, that's the good stuff, right? You want the Marrow. It's the truth. How do we get it? Verbs over adverbs. That does not mean adverbs go away. Adverbs are beautiful. Adverbs belong in our prose. So you don't get rid of adverbs, but you have to choose when you want to use them. If you are trying to write something very significant, ask yourself if you've chosen the strongest verb for your prose. If you're using an adverb and it's something that's supposed to be high impact, then you might need a stronger verb instead. Play around with that. Don't be afraid to try those other verbs and swap out those words and see which one has more weight. Nouns should be precise when you are looking for that weight. A flower or a vibrant lily? Dirt or red clay? Make those choices. If it's just a scene that you're describing the dirt on the side of the road, cool. But if this is a scene where she's stopped the car and she's staring out at the red clay, it's going to make a difference. Now, determining the weight of the word, change it. If you're not sure if the word is having the impact you want, swap it out. And when you swap it out, does it affect the emotional temperature of the room? Because if it's not changing the emotional temperature, it's probably not a significant word. If you need a significant word there, keep playing with it. Here's some examples. So you have a light shift. The sun shone through the window. Fine. Balanced, nonchalant. The sun interrogated the room through the blinds. That's harsh. It's aggressive. The sun leaked through the dusty glass. Well, that's weak. It's sad. Neglected. Sound shift. A car drove down the street. A car prowled the curb. A car rumbled past the house. They all have a different feel depending on what you're trying to achieve. Where do you want your reader? What do you want the reader to feel?
Mm.
She held the glass. She clutched the glass. She cradled the glass. Play with your nouns, play with your verbs, shift out the word, and see what the impact is to get to the weight that you're looking for. Now, poetry, Rachelle probably confirmed this, is all marrow. It's all truth. Every word is critical. You don't have 100,000 words to play with in poetry. We do in fiction. Creative fiction, unless it's a flash fiction, and even there you get a little bit of leeway on the marrow, but you need that same skeletal strength to support the story. So what a poet does is the same thing a fiction writer has to do, which is why I love when Rachelle and I team up together, because that core is essential to both styles. We need to know what that truth is. But the truth is not about the words. It's about the ache. You want to know what hurts. You want to know what feels. This is a human relatable emotion. Even extreme joy, any of those emotions are what you want to trigger in that reader. And so that's where the truth is going to come from. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for the oof. So before you try to be poetic or profound, do this first. One plain, ugly truth sentence. Just put the truth out there as raw and basic as you can. I miss my dad. It's one simple statement. Very relatable. People know what this feels like, whether it's their father, their mother, their brother, their friend. Most people have experienced loss. So they know what this is. This is very relatable. But it's a very generic, vague feeling. But it's the truth. So now we have the truth. Now we can dress it up. We can take it, add metaphors, figurative language, add those anchors for the weight. My dad's blue chair wasn't just empty. The memory foam forgot his existence. Now we have something specific. Now we can tap into the reader and make them go, oh. So we have figurative language. You got your similes, your metaphors. I use personification for this one. You can do it with any of those. Not all of them. Choose when you're using. There's physical logic to it. I kind of went with the opposite. Memory foam is designed to remember, but by saying it forgot, I created a sense of a tragedy. I literally erased his presence in that chair. And I used one weight for each. I used a grounding anchor for the blue chair, and I used a sensory anchor for my sight. I was looking at the betrayal in that memory foam. So I just am using one weight for each of those. So is this pretty or is this profound? Her absence was a void in the room that I couldn't fill. Now we add a grounding anchor, a cup, and a sense, a touch. I reach for the second cup, my breath hitching as my fingers touch the cold porcelain. Now we feel the loss a little bit more. It's not just an empty room. We're reaching for something that we're touching. It's cold, and we remember that we are alone. That second cup was not necessary. So you want specificity over vagueness, and that's always going to hit the greater impact. So you can be super vague, and it's not going to have the same impact as if you come up with one specific detail. The one that makes the person go is what you're looking for. All right, now it's going to be your turn. So we're going to have a 15-minute writing session. I have a prompt for you. A character returning to a home they haven't seen in 10 years, knowing someone they love is no longer there. Your constraint is not to use any feeling words. Sad, lonely, nostalgic, any of those feeling words, toss them. You're going to describe one grounding anchor, so connect to a physical object, and you're going to choose one sensory anchor to connect with the reader. Now, pick one theme for your language, so don't mix your metaphors. And we'll go ahead and we'll set a timer for 15 minutes on this. and we'll go ahead and write. We'll see you in a bit. Okay. So how did that feel for you guys? Did it make sense to try to think of it as grounding anchors and sensory anchors, or was that kind of not something that made sense?
think
It was okay.
I think I'd have to look at it more specifically to see if I actually achieved that point.
Doesn't matter as long as you were writing.
Yeah. You can share in the chat. You can turn on your mic and talk about it too, if
Yeah,
whichever is easier.
either way. You can drop anything in the chat.
Mine kind of turned into a ghost story.
Oh, cool.
Funny because last year the one prompt was like a haunted library or something.
Yeah, we did the books. The books were whispering.
Yeah, the books were whispering. Oh, and I think I must turn that into a ghost story. Yeah. This was that the woman was well loved, but when she died, some evil spirit actually took over, and there's a lot of havoc and everything. So the narrator, is now back to just burn it all down.
There you go. All right, we got something in the chat here.
Oh, she went poetic.
I like the whispering in the wind.
Can I read it out loud?
You want to? That's from Amy, right? Can Rachelle read that? Amy? Can Rachelle read it out loud? Yep. Go for it.
Just for the live. And
Yeah.
to my very dear friend, whispering in the wind. I walked into the room and heard the wind whispering memories of our loved one no longer beside us. For 10 years, I've looked out from this window, like the window of my soul, weeping. Is that the rain falling from the sky? Ah, the window of my soul replies, it is I. The wind howls and it rages once. When I looked out from within this window, another time the wind was more silent and bitter, wailing, a weary whisper lingering on as time stretches at the same time stands still. Even though I too want to go where my loved one is, to be beside you again. You've been gone for much too many years, my very dear friend, whispering your words of laughter in the wind. You're gone forever now. You're gone forevermore, now, my very dear friend. Will the wind let me forget you for just one moment, please? Oh.
I like
Very
that.
nice.
Very, very nice. Yes. You know what? And you did hit the mark because you weren't telling people how you were feeling. You were letting the words convey the weight for you without using the feeling words. You were establishing the environment and the
Hmm.
atmosphere. You were establishing the atmosphere. So that is how you do it. I mean, so I think it's beautiful, and I think it completely conveys the loss. So I'd say yes, it was a win. Rod, did you want to share any part of yours, or did you want to
I did post it there, but
post yours here?
I'll read it. That
You want to read it?
I'd happily read it.
Oh, I see
Okay.
it there. Yeah.
Yeah.
The house looked smaller than he remembered, rougher, worn, lashed by weather that he wasn't there to experience, signs that it no longer received regular loving care. The door opened at his approach, and Aunt Betty stepped out, arms wide to receive him. A quick hug, and then they went inside. It hit him as he crossed the threshold. There was no going back. There was no going back. The time to make things right was no more. The house looked the same inside, yellow floral patterned wallpaper, hardwood floor, the same furniture in the same places, and yet there was an emptiness here, an unused and untouchable space that he couldn't define. It was as if the house itself was mourning the loss of his uncle.
Okay. I do like the house being smaller because that tends to happen. That's relatable. Everything always
Yeah,
is much smaller than we remember when we come back to it.
yeah. I was going
I
for a counterpoint where it's smaller on the outside and bigger on the inside.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. When you walk
Bigger
in,
and
it's
emptier.
got the emptiness.
Yeah.
I would definitely focus on that pattern wallpaper. The focus on that would be good. That when you see that, if there was a little stain that he remembers the time something hit it or whatever, would be kind of interesting to see. Because I like when there's that one detail pulled out, and I like the yellow floral patterned wallpaper. So nice.
So
There we go.
yes, in poetry, we are often working with vague feelings, and poems are always up to interpretation. And with so it's a I always fear sounding a bit contradictory when I start talking about these things because there are kind of our moments, but I'm going to get to a point, and I think it usually makes sense. Um, so there's definitely a sense of vagueness that people can interpret things differently, but you also want to be writing in a way that is very concise. You really want to actually bring home the message that you want to be expressing in a poem. Because you can lose your reader, or people might just end up thinking, oh, I think I just don't understand poetry. Um, and that has two ways of being. So, um, when you think that you just don't understand poetry, sometimes it's just not written well. And someone just actually didn't fully deliver their point, or they went in a few different directions and popped themselves from place to place, like they described one physical location, but then suddenly now they're in the mountains, and then they're out observing the stars, and then there's a cup of tea in their hand, and then you're like, I don't get it. And we don't always, I mean, even as a poet, I don't read a ton of poetry myself because I'm just a bit more of a writer at this point. Um, Granted, I mean, I consume media in a lot of different forms. I've definitely read a lot of poetry. I've read a lot of prose. I listen to a lot of music, and lyrics inspire me a lot too. But lyrics are well written and grounded in whatever the story or message is that they want to send. So all sorts of things can be inspiration when it comes to writing poetry. Um, and so back to the other reason that like some people think that they don't understand poetry is because in school a lot teachers will end up telling kids, no, you interpreted that wrong. It's about this. And so then you get these mixed messages of, wait, I thought poetry is up to interpretation, but now you're giving me like a 60% on this assignment, and I don't understand. You know what? I just don't like poetry. It doesn't make sense to me. Well, the teacher is now putting upon you what their interpretation is and telling you that you're wrong, and that's no fun. And that's just going to take you away from the craft. And there are proper and improper ways to observe things, like when you're studying Shakespeare and you just don't understand the language at all. And you do need that teaching, right, to bring you into the right place because it is such a different century and way of expressing. So, it's really great to have a certain amount of guidance, but really what it comes down to is what the reader actually feels in the end. Um, and I mean, sometimes I think probably in the past, seeing the stage play with the expression of the actors and the movement is was probably a lot easier to get. Because we're not all just going out to Shakespeare plays because they're one, not that common to go and find, especially in North America. Two, they're going to be expensive because they're well produced with great actors who can actually perform it. Um, So, anyways, I don't know if I went off track there a little bit, but um back to stripping the abstract and taking a vague feeling and giving that some kind of a precise feeling coming from yourself. Um when I approach a poem, I want to very concisely describe how I'm feeling. And it can come from something as simple as, like Rebecca's example, I miss my dad, right? I think that was it was my dad. Yeah. So, and you can start off like that. You can start the poem with I miss my dad. And then that can just be a starting point. Then you just want to expand on that. What is that feeling? And then you want to specify it because you can get lost in the vagueness and then you don't have anything specific that makes it different, that makes people want to care that much. Because you can just be, say it's kind of like writing a sort of a generic post on social media. I miss him and it's just been so long and yeah, I just miss our hugs. I mean, yeah, that is what you feel. Sure. This is something that's general, the experience of missing my father. But when you're trying to tell a story or a poem, poems are stories in a different kind of form. Using some concise language to actually say what it is that you want to say is what makes it stand out and what makes it actually powerful. So, and that's where you want to go and dig up a certain memory. I miss my dad. He was the only person who, well, I mean, this isn't, I don't know if it's going to sound poetic. I'm just coming up with an idea here, but he was the only person who actually took me out bowling when I was a kid. Bowling, going out bowling was the activity that we did, and I didn't do it with my mother because she wasn't athletic or something like that. So like now you're kind of personalizing the feeling of I miss my dad. Or maybe you're at the bowling alley and that's where you're placing the poem in. So you're putting yourself into that setting and you're feeling this longing of whatever, right? And then you can go and specify in some other ways. How do you convey if the father is dead? Um, you don't just want to say my father is dead. You can say that in a story when you're writing a story because you can talk about that, but yeah, it does come off a little different um, when you're actually reading or telling the poem. Sorry, I lost myself there. So, but then you can also say, I miss my father because in my personal life, um, it was divorce. So we lived in two different countries. So there is a different sense of longing to describe why I miss my father, why these experiences are different. And do you know that in Canada, it is actually mostly 5-pin bowling?
Really?
I I grew up with a lot of 10-pin bowling and I go to like bowling alley here down that's actually down the road for me and it's 5-pin and I'm like, what?
I never heard of
This
that.
is useless.
I never heard of that.
I know. I didn't even realize either. When Niagara Falls is 10-pin, I'm like, oh yeah, this is normal.
Yeah.
You have leagues for 5-pin bowling? Why? So then, I mean, and if I want to expand on that, I could just be like, and here I am roll rolling 5 pins, and it just doesn't feel as fulfilling in like a whole experience as in being in America. That, I don't know, the sense of bigness, the sense of home, this whatever. So that yeah. Um
Well, and you can, in those feelings of they can vary so that the simplicity of it can actually be very impactful. I mean, just talking about the bowling pins can bring a sense of sorrow or loss when you start thinking of it. When you're if you're thinking of your dad and how you used to do it this way, and so yeah, bowling is just this loud, noisy environment, but it could have this very quiet, sorrowful
Mm,
solitude, even though it's a loud and noisy environment. So, you can play with those types of juxtaposition, and that type of imagery can have a really hard impact by focusing on just that one detail. So,
oh yeah. And now that you say that, see, I like that reflection because then I can say the emptiness of the pins when there's only five instead of the fullness that is the
yes.
10. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. It's those details. It's that specificity is so much more important than the vagueness when you want the
Yeah.
impact. And with the poetry, you have to do that with those words.
hmm And then, and then also in a poem, you can't have too many words or else it kind of kills the prose. Kind of like you're saying with this whole structure and the skeleton, you with a narrative story, you can add almost a bit more fluff as long as it's
Yeah,
all part of what it is that you're describing,
right.
but for poems, and of course there's different styles. You can be writing a stream of consciousness one that is just like a full, almost like a brain dump of something, but you still need to be within that expression the whole time. If it's the same place or if it's the same emotion, you got to stay there. Or then other things that let's just say I was helping a friend. I was reviewing a poem that he asked me to look over and give some like solid critiques. I'm like, okay. Um, I was a lot nicer than it was last year, but also than when I gave him one, but also it was just better than than the last one that I looked at. So it was nice. But one example that I wanted to bring up is that like the first line ended up being it I read it as like a conversational thing.
Mhm.
Um and it was something like um I I don't want to extinguish or something your fire. So basically talking about this person is like their own fire and that he wants to be involved with this person and but he doesn't want to, dim their light or put their fire out just to be involved, right? Like etc. So basically what I told him was like you don't want to give options. You just want to pick one. Pick one word that is strong enough to carry the rest of the poem so that, yeah, because like otherwise, yeah, you are then you sound like you're having conversation or you're trying to, kind of convince somebody, here's how we can work together, but I don't want to be like this or this or this with you. That's that's an emotional, you know, intimate conversation. But a poem isn't a conversation. It can be in different forms.
Right.
But in this case, it was pick one that's stronger, that's going to carry you through. Um, so that's
Yeah, the less is
I think
more
that
is often forgotten, no matter what we're writing.
hmm
People tend to want to like appease everyone, and so they kind of keep it vague that way, trying to make sure that I want everyone to get something out of this, and so I'm going to put all these different things out there, and it's like, but now you've got so much out there. It's like the using all your senses. I mean, you can use all the senses in a scene, just not all in one paragraph, because otherwise it's just floating away. You can't appease everyone. So
mm,
choose the one and focus it. And I think a lot of times when writers leave it with so many different options like that, it's because they're not sure of what they're saying. And I think that's why sometimes they're so vague, is because they don't even know what they're saying. So that comes back to that, write the one ugly truth. What is the one thing you're trying to say, and build from there. Otherwise you end up with what you're talking about, where it's just so many options, and it's like, do you know what you're writing about? Because your readers aren't going to know what you're writing about. When you're appealing to everyone, you're appealing to no one.
yeah. I always like to talk about rhyming a little, at least a little bit,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
how
that.
because rhyming is a problem. It's what people can use to anchor themselves in the sense that they are writing a poem because it gives them a bit of format and it gives them something that like the rhyme feels good because you're like, oh, I landed that rhyme and then that has a sense of flow to it, right? Like you feel like you've reached the sense of completion because you have made a word rhyme in the next line.
Mm-hmm.
And me saying that out loud, that almost rhymed. It's a bit more of an Eminem style, you know. He'll kind of muck with different words to give it a feeling, but as a rapper, you can do that because you're working with a beat.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
True.
in a way, I kind of like to, I think I do that a little bit in my writing because I'm also inspired by beat poets like Jack Kerouac, very much kind of, does that. He was inspired by the jazz age and was going to, jazz shows, but then also perform poetry. And so there's a different feeling to that. Um, Easy, cheesy, nice and squeezy. But then when I read that, it's almost I want to give that a beat, right? Like so then when people really try to rhyme a whole bunch, then it's like, are you writing lyrics actually? Or are you writing poetry? And but then the next problem is more so that people end up wanting to rhyme so badly that they just choose words that don't even make any sense. And I see this as a problem over and over again because it's like, okay, great, you got your rhyme. Well done, very good. Are you happy? Because I don't get what you're actually saying because that had no connection with that. Oh, or sometimes, okay, I can see where you're making the connection, but it's really not necessary. And then there's this one friend who has been really inspired to write poetry through talking to me. And I'm like, okay, that's great. And I can give you some support and guidance and critique things. And I think I tried a couple of times, but he's not receiving it. So you can't give unwarranted advice. Um, but eventually I just stopped reading the stuff that he's posting and quite often because I'm like, why do you keep doing this? I keep telling you not to rhyme because you're losing your prose. And all I'm doing now is when I see you post something, is I'm just like looking at the very end of each line and like fact checking that you got your rhyme in there. And I'm not even reading the rest. You've lost me on the rest of the words. But when you're writing a poem, like Rebecca said, every word counts. Every word has meaning and it's very specific grammar to arrive at what you're really trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, you lose your reader. Then one time, like a year later, I see him post, all right, I took my first stab at a free verse poem. So like here we go. I'm like, ooh, I'm interested. And I read it and it made sense and it was powerful. And I cheered him on, but I don't think he understood why I was cheering him on still. I'm like, okay, well, all right.
Yeah, I mean, rhyming poems can be great, but they it's not easy to create a well-crafted rhymed poem because you have to
Mhm.
have the meter and the rhythm and the rhyme. And
Yep.
so people will
Yep.
will start off really strong, but then they end up really weak because they're so focused on that rhyme word that they've completely lost the rhythm and more importantly, they've lost the impact.
Yeah.
Mm.
It is not
Yep.
having the so the cat in the hat is a beautiful rhyme and it
Mhm.
works. It was not written fly by night. I guarantee you Dr. Seuss put time into making those rhymes make sense
Mm.
and keeping the
Mhm.
rhythm. But you can't do that with everything. A lot of poetry is going to hit harder when you're not so focused on that rhyme, when you're more focused on the weight of
Mm.
the word instead of
Mhm.
the
Mm.
weight of the rhyme. Yeah.
Yeah, I like to go out to there's breweries that have open mics
Yeah.
and there'll be people who are doing, music generally. And I just go up there and I'm like, yeah, so I'm going to infect your ears with poetry. Haha. Uh, people actually tend to enjoy it though. Sometimes I get well, you should have an instrument with you. And sometimes I do. I'm like, my words are powerful enough on their own. Because because I'm not focusing on the rhyme, I'm focusing on my delivery.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've written my poems, they have a point, they have a feeling attached to them, and when I read them with that feeling, that's what's giving them potency, and people are paying attention.
Right.
And people aren't just like people aren't just sitting there like, I don't get it. People are just like, I love that. Like, wow, that was really nice.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't get what a lot of singers are singing because I just don't understand the way that they're projecting their voice. So, and sometimes it's a bad microphone, and or sometimes the rest of the music is overpowering the
Oh, that
the
happens.
microphone coming through the speakers, and I'm like, I don't know, like the music's nice. I'm a lyrics person. I can't hear a word you're saying, so good for you.
I'm a lyrics person too. That's interesting because I was going to do a poll on this once because I've asked people just randomly, like, what's more important to you, the lyrics or the music? And a lot of people say, well, both. But, really, when you say that it's a good song, when people say, oh, this is a great song, I want to know what you're saying. Are you talking about the lyrics or are you talking about the music? Because
Yeah.
as a writer, I'm all about the lyrics. And so I'm always curious about how other writers are. You're a musician as well, Rachelle. So for you, I wonder, is it more for lyrics than the music, even as a musician? For
Yeah,
you?
for sure. I mean, I'm largely about the lyrics and um I mean, I will critique that someone is just very boringly strumming their guitar and I'm like, that's good. So I'm here for the lyrics then. I don't know if you're much of a guitar player. So the lyrics are fitting and they're nice, then like good, we're in a good place here. Um but then uh yeah, I mean even like with like there's the vocal power, there's the not being a boring singer or screamer, also in my
Mm-hmm.
case. Um, but you're also, yeah, your lyrics matter to me a lot. Where
Right.
there's also a lot of musicians where I've had this conversation with, they're like, I don't care. I don't even know what some people, I don't even know why we have a singer. Like, I'm just here for the guitar riffs. And I'm like, what? You realize that the singer is why you have an audience.
I've asked people though. I'll be like, "Hey, oh, this is a great song." I'm like, "Oh, what's it about?" I always say that. For
Yeah.
my entire life, I've said that to people when they say it's a great song. What's it about? I've had a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't know." They're not listening to the lyrics. I'm like, okay, so the great song for them is the music, and so everyone connects
Yeah.
differently. But my question's always, what's the song about? Because I hear
Yeah.
the story. I want the stories. The songs that really hit me, make me cry. It's the story,
Hmm.
and the song has
It's
and
got impact. Yeah.
yeah, and if it's a forced rhyme lyric, not so good. So the ones that are just not flowing aren't going to hit it for me. So there's so much to it, and it impacts us all the time, whether we're thinking about it or not. The lyrics have meaning, the poem has meaning, the story has meaning. It's those moments of meaning that you were looking for. It's that oof. It's what hurts. It's the ache. It's the joy. That's what we're looking for when we're writing. That's what we want to deliver to our reader, right? We want our
Yeah.
reader to feel that way. We want them to go, oof. That's why I'm always talking about fire lines when we're doing stuff. Like, what's your fire line? Give me, and I'll flag people's fire lines when I'm doing critiques. I'm like, that's a fire line. That's a fire line, because those are so important to flag. Because
Mm.
that's what hit. That was it, and it doesn't have to be profound. It doesn't have to be poetic. And there's nothing wrong with beautiful language. I love beautiful language. There's a lot to it, but sometimes the fire line is the simple, precise moment of impact. When that hits hard, that's what you did. That's what you want. That's what you're delivering.
Yeah,
For me, it's the
exactly.
fire line.
It's the fire line, it's the flow, it's the
Mm-hmm.
grounding.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yes, sir.
all together is the delivery. The whole package comes together. But I mean, you can't put weight on every word in a longer piece. Obviously, like I said, poetry is going to be more concise. You don't have that freedom to play. But when we're writing, we need to think about what we're trying to give our reader. What are we trying to deliver? What is it that we want? What's the truth we're
Hmm.
aiming for? And how are we going to deliver it? And if we think
Right.
about it, we
And
can do it.
yeah, and if it's like if that is, we can say that like it can be generally received as a certain message, and then it can also be up to interpretation, or your personal experience can then be reflected
Mm-hmm.
um in part of your interpretation.
Yep.
And um that's to kind of come back to the vagueness or the I don't understand poetry. It's like you really do want to actually make something that is very clear in what you want to say,
Mm-hmm.
and then is also up to interpretation, because then I've heard people read, like if someone's read my book, like I don't know, out loud, and I'm like, across the room or something somehow, and I hear them talking about something, and I'm like, I didn't even think of that. Oh, that's cool. So it was still well received or
Yeah.
whatever, but it was also meaning something entirely different than I meant. Um, and I even as a writer forget that, because I'm like, well, it was meant to mean this, and this is what I, but then I also understand where I will write something with a certain amount of precision
Mm-hmm.
and openness, so
Yep.
that, like you're not going to understand the very specific moment,
No.
that I experienced, but I can give you enough details to bring you into where I truly, where what I was feeling. Um, right, my little note here. It's like I have I'll have moments of observation that then lead to thought processes. Um, and that's sometimes that can be how I approach a poem. Like um, quick example here from my first book. It's going to mean something different for different people. Um, and this one isn't even based in too much imagery. It's called Dance of Truth. Of truth I dare speak, of truth I dare seek. What is truth when each word I say and everything I see is all an illusion? What does it mean to seek truth when I am not here? I am not. I am not. There is no I. There's a name I'd seek and I'd ask, but truth locks it away. It's time to wreck reality. Stay still. Watch your feet dance before you. Take your hand of lunacy and join in the dance they've begun.
Good.
So, I mean, in a way, I mean, I can admit there's no visual exactly there, but there is
Right.
the idea of the dance, and I'd say dancing with spirit. I mean, you can tell me what you interpret of yourself, so.
And that's everyone's going to have the different way they bring it to it, and that's great. That's the whole interpretation when you were talking about school and being told that that's not what it meant. Everyone's going to have a different. They're going to come to it differently. Everyone processes grief differently. Everyone sees something different for something that's joyous. What one person thinks is exhilarating, somebody else thinks is terrifying. So we all have our own experiences when we approach something we're reading. And
Hmm.
so you're going to write your truth, and someone else is going to have their interpretation of it. And that's exactly what art is supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
That's how we connect with people. It doesn't have to be the exact same. I experienced it this way, and so if you experienced it this way, then we can connect. No, 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 no. We can connect with a lot of different people with different experiences because it's going to come down to that one raw truth and everyone's perception of it.
Hmm.
And I think I think that's how we really want to connect with our readers too. We don't have to say if you didn't experience it this way, then it's not for you.
Hmm.
Nah, no, no. You can still approach it. You can still have that connection. And it might be totally different with it, like you said. I didn't even think of it that way. Somebody else read it that way. Cool. You still connected, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So
And
it's
I
a good
like
thing.
to, my poetry can be about, there is a lot about actually truth seeking in my
Mm-hmm.
poetry. And that is about like understanding our place in consciousness and what everything means. Is it all an illusion?
Right.
When we're told that yes, there are solid objects, but nothing is solid. There's all these like little, you know, tiny atoms that are constantly moving around, and you're like, "But my laptop is sitting there all still and solid and metal. How?" And those are the kind of observations I like to make. Okay, sure. How do I live with this?
Hey, existential crises are everywhere, man.
Yeah.
And they make great writing. And I think this is where a lot of people should. They try to become like they'll see something like that, like, oh gosh, that sounds like really profound. And then they'll try to take something as simple as that, like your keyboard is alive, and they'll become really vague, trying to sound really profound and really poetic about it when it's just like strip it back down. Bring it
Mhm.
back here so it is something you can zero in on and actually bring it to. Don't try to be so profound. Find the
Yeah.
truth.
If
Then
you
you
want
can
to personify
always
it, you make it
finish.
into a cartoon. But then if you want to be real about it, bring it back to science.
Yeah, there you go. Well, Rod's our science guy, so. Rod's our science guy. He'll talk atoms.
Yep. Definitely atoms. Yeah. Energy.
Yeah.
Energy. It's
Yeah.
all. It's all. So words are alive, right? If we want to go down to it,
Hmm.
we have,
Yeah.
we have living. The ink that comes onto the page. It's all alive. We can go into this whole beautiful, profound, poetic thing about it, and it's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, when I talk about weight of the words, it's not like, okay, you have to be so precise. No,
Yeah.
it's about understanding what you're trying to convey so that it's all intentional. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's the intentionality. I mean,
Right. Because people can
it's the
start to take
clear.
that into being a
Yeah,
bit too, okay, so am I just like writing a boring textbook then? No.
no,
No.
right. Yeah, exactly. It's not like about like, okay, we're going to talk about this capo and exactly how it's, no, no, but we can talk about it metaphorically. We can talk about different things. Don't try to compare hand lotion and a capo because you're not going to be able to relate those. But but you want to find the core concept. And then you can be profound, you can be poetic, but it just needs to be logical. Otherwise, we
Yeah.
have that Western thriller where the dirt doesn't care what your name is. I'm sorry. It's just not going to happen. So you want it to have logic. And it can be poetic, it can be profound. But when it's performative prose, because it's not saying anything, that's when you have to stop and assess what you've done. Assess the or. What do we
Mhm.
really have here? Um, I know I've thewriteauthor.com has my services out there if anybody wants to reach out. If anybody has any questions, you guys are welcome to DM me, contact me, Facebook me. I'm always open anyway. Rachelle, you have a website as well.
Yep, it's meccateapoet.com, and that's where you'll find the tea there. You'll find writing services, and I would also like to share that I'm opening up a membership. It's going to start May the 4th, because why not for the nerds? May the
May the
4th be
fourth
with
be
you.
with you.
It's actually also the day I published my first book, Chaos of Tao,
Ooh,
um, back in 2021. My membership is called Human Error, and it is a place for poets and tea lovers and even just creative small business owners to gather and share our experiences, also get coaching for whatever is needed, a place to be real with each other, have good and bad ideas. We're even going to have bad idea sessions because you just want to declutter all of whatever. But it's about having fun as well, because I've experienced spaces where business coaching is just go and crawl into the deepest depths of your hearts to find the truth of what's really going on with you. And it's like, I'm just not having fun. So, um, and I love to laugh. I love to joke and everything. And sometimes that laughter is just what's relieving and will move you forward.
Yep.
And then, so there will be just casual tea sessions, there will be coaching sessions, there'll be open mics and everything. But the idea of calling it human error is also a fight against the rising age of AI and finding truth and connection with one another.
Nice.
So
Very
that's
nice.
opening up pretty soon.
Well, good
You
luck.
can follow me, Rachelle Mecca on Facebook. You can also follow Mecca Tea. I don't post on there as much, but it's that is the tea company because Mecca Tea. Voila.
Your tea is a different website. You just said
It's all on
different.
one website.
That's what I thought. I thought you just said.
Yeah,
Oh, your the Facebook following is the different. You have the
the
different
Facebook following,
Facebook.
Facebook and
Gotcha.
Instagram.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay. I didn't realize you had a Facebook for Mecca Tea.
yeah, I do. It's just kind of taken a back seat lately because I've been more focused in my coaching world. So, and
Well,
so
and
then
this
the
is
personal brand.
yeah, this is what I talk to my members about in the Writers Forge too all the time because the more the more profiles you have, the harder it is to keep up with it
Yeah.
because it's all about algorithms and engagement. And so now you're saying this profile is taking a backseat because I'm spending more time in this profile, and so the less is more.
Yeah, well, I was spending so
Back to
much
that
time
time.
trying to make things happen with Mecca Tea, and like I do these nice, lovely big posts. Especially as a writer, I think it's relatable. I write these nice big posts on
Yeah,
Mecca Tea, and a couple of people are even noticing it, and I'm like, but guess who gets a little bit more notice and attention? Not that I'm an attention seeker, but I want to try to get my services out there and talk more. I realized that just me as Rochelle Mecca is more of what people pay attention to. They don't
yeah,
really care as much for the brand name, and then again, like Mecca Tea is Mecca Tea. I'm Rochelle Mecca's the writer, so when
right.
I'm also going in that direction, just
Yeah. And when you have two different services, it is kind of, hard to have it all as one, but you're the brand on both of them. So,
exactly.
you
Yeah.
know,
Rochelle Mecca or
that's
it's Mecca Tea. So it's all me anyway. That's what people told me. I had a tea house open for a year and I mean, also just running Mecca Tea. And sure, yeah, people cared about it was the brand, but really the experience was coming to see me. So,
right. Yeah. Yeah. The
yeah.
face. See, Brad knows I talk about this all the time. It's about you. You, the
Hmm.
author,
Hmm.
you, the brand. It is about
Yep.
you, and that is how you're going to find your audience. And we're going to be talking about that in our marketing workshop coming up.
Oh, cool.
Good.
we're going
Good.
we're
Awesome.
going to talk about keeping those social engagement platforms down to just the core essence ones, the singular profile, and the author. Focusing
Yeah,
on the
because you don't
author.
want to stretch yourself all over the place either. Like
No.
you're a writer, you're focused on your book or whatever it is, right? And so you don't want to just try to make 7 social medias happen just to get 3 likes from people who barely care.
Right. Yeah. It's all so important.
Yeah,
And we can't fight the algorithm, so we just have to work with what we've got.
yeah.
And
And
so we
then
have
yeah,
to just
there's
work
either the
smarter, not harder.
algorithm or the amount people actually care
Yeah.
because
Well,
everything's a click and a swipe. So
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
It's
mm,
really hard. It's not an easy task to do. And just having this workshop, trying to get people to know. I mean, it's a free workshop, and just trying to have people find out about it. I had a bunch of people just find out about it yesterday, and I've been posting about it for 3 weeks because
yeah,
Facebook
Hmm.
decided when to show what to whom.
yeah,
Yep.
It's out of our control. So
yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
having multiple profiles and all this other stuff, it's not worth it. Same thing with pseudonyms. I'll tell authors all the time, oh, I'm going to have a pseudonym for this, and should I have a different pseudonym for this genre and that? No, 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 no. Unless there's a reason that you need to hide away from your name, do not have multiple pseudonyms.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you have to. Stephen King doesn't. Shawshank Redemption wasn't a horror. The Green Mile's not horror.
Mhm.
They're all on his profile, one author name, one profile.
Yeah.
I mean, he did have a
Also
pseudonym
Yep.
for a
postings
while.
from Dan Brown, and it's just yep.
Yeah, yeah. You don't need
Dan
all these different
Brown.
names
Yeah.
because then you have to do all that hard marketing for every single one of them,
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
and you don't know who your readers are by having one name. I read more than one genre. I read all genres. I'm in the middle of a romance right now. I read sci-fi. I read fantasy. I read thrillers. I read contemporary fiction. I read poetry. I read everything. I'm an avid reader. So
Mm.
if I have an author I love and they have a pseudonym, I may never find out about them.
Yep.
Mhm.
But if I know that they write all these other genres, I'm in it. I'm on it. Yeah, I'm going to read those too. So make it easy. Life is hard enough. Let's make it easy. All right. Well, you guys, thank you once again. I really appreciate it.